This is the TechCurrents podcast, real talk about technology and stories from working in the tech world. All opinions expressed on this show are solely those of the host and guests. And now, here is your host, Sam Cavalier.
Hi, everybody, and welcome again to the TechCurrents podcast. I am your host, Sam Cavalier. I am joined once again by my very good friend and co-host, Ron Mellinson. Ron, thank you for joining us.
Hello, Sam. As always, a pleasure.
We have a very great lineup today for today's podcast setup. We have a special guest where we will talk about tech. Specifically, one of the things trending in tech that I mentioned in the last episode, which is AI and what is being used to train the models. So we will spend a little bit of time with that. And I have a guest that is particularly impacted by that conversation. And he actually is, there's a lot of things great about having him on. So I am looking forward to having T. Morris on to join us today. But I want to spend some time talking in our opening segment, our new favorite segment, LinkedIn lunacy. So let us begin with this week in LinkedIn and LinkedIn lunacy. So for today's discussion, when I Google what is LinkedIn, what I get back is that LinkedIn is a social networking site for professionals to connect, learn, and grow their careers. And it is the world's largest professional network. I think that's probably a fair description of what LinkedIn is supposed to be.
Yeah, I would argue that that was the genesis. Yeah, I think we're going to talk a little bit how it's gone off the rails recently, but yeah, go ahead, keep going.
So the lunacy for today is specifically about, and you're right, it's, from my perspective, it's kind of gone off the rails a little bit. We are talking about political content that is now being posted on a regular basis on LinkedIn. And does it belong there? Because that in and of itself is now becoming a huge topic of discussion. Does this content belong on LinkedIn? I don't know the answer. I know what I personally believe, and that is that every time I see it, I'm clicking the not interested, which, by the way, tells me everything I need to know about the political content filters on LinkedIn. They don't work for anything, because if they did, I shouldn't be seeing any of that. And I'm continuing to say not interested, not interested, not interested. So if anybody from LinkedIn is out there, I would love to have you tell me how that filter is supposed to work, because as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't work. Nevertheless, does this content belong on LinkedIn, or is it literally just turning LinkedIn into Facebook with resumes and more crying?
I have definitely seen a significant increase in the political posts, especially. Look, one of the reasons I standardized, I moved off of Instagram, I moved off of Facebook, heaven forbid. I did that probably last September. I just kind of got away from that because people I thought that I really knew were just posting dumb things. And it became wildly frustrating to see some of the things that they were posting. And they were posting more from the emotional side of things versus the logical side of things. Now, from a politics and ideology perspective, I don't care. We just, be an independent. You want to be a liberal. You want to be a conservative. You want to be some blend of all three. I don't care.
You do you. That's fine.
Exactly. You do you. I am totally cool with that. But this wickedness that people seem to derive out of social media as a construct is wildly frustrating. Because I'm right, you're wrong, and allow me a forum to explain why you're so wrong. Between people doing that, and then the other challenge, and I think some of these are people just looking for an echo chamber, right? I'm looking for people who think like me, who'll be like giving me thumbs up and likes, give me that dopamine hit. Even if I'm wildly wrong, I'm sure there's some section of the populace that's going to agree with me. I worship a doorknob. How many other doorknob worshipers are out there? I'm sure I could find a bunch on the social media or site of your choosing. But it was so much, and it's bled over to LinkedIn. Now, I will tell you, one of the challenges, at least this is as I see it. Let's go back to our earlier conversations about job applying, or any hiring manager or any recruiter, kind of worth their salt, is likely going to look you up on LinkedIn. And there's a little button on the left-hand side that says show me posts and or show me articles. And contrary to popular belief, but things you put on the internet kind of live forever. So anything you post today, and you could be the most eloquent, you could have a degree from Harvard in political science, and you could have a very, I'll call it bias, but a very eloquent post, really showing why you're right and everybody else is wrong. Once you post that, effectively that becomes part of your thread. Let's say, for the sake of argument, a year later, the entire world changes. And the person you thought was awesome is potentially not that awesome to you anymore. And perhaps they're not awesome to anybody anymore, right? Maybe they lost a race. Maybe they were found guilty of something and the world has turned against them, whatever. Well, the fact that you had posted even a very eloquent piece years ago, a year ago, can potentially come back to haunt you. The other piece is, when I look at LinkedIn, I try to treat it like you do. It's kind of a garden wall. It's more of a professional network. If I want politics, I will go to Facebook. If I want politics, heck, I'll go to Reddit. There's a ton of stuff on Reddit. I can find all sorts of crazy stuff on Reddit, right?
Yeah.
If I'm looking for an echo chamber or more people who want to worship doorknobs with me, if I go to Reddit, I'm sure I can find a bunch.
Yeah, you can find that, right?
Okay, and we're all worshiping doorknobs together. So I think we've mentioned this in an earlier podcast. I mean, if you want to vent, and this is on anything, you want to vent about politics, you want to vent about the stock market, you want to vent about your employer, there are platforms for that. Go create a burner account in Reddit and have at it. Get all that negativity out of you. Put it over there. Let's try not to put it on Facebook
Or LinkedIn.
or LinkedIn.
Don't put it on LinkedIn. If you want to put it on Facebook, quite honestly, make up an anonymous account for yourself, post it on Reddit. That was actually a piece of advice we gave previously.
I thought so. Yeah, I remember we were talking about that.
Put it on Reddit. Don't put it on LinkedIn. Don't put it on LinkedIn. Don't put it on Facebook with your real name. Because, as Ron just said, if it's on the internet, it's forever. How many times have we seen in recent history somebody pull out of the Twitter archives the post from 7 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever, of something that somebody wrote, right? They did not expect that it would come back to haunt them. And lo and behold, if it's on the internet, it's forever. And so it gets pulled back out, and now somebody's getting canceled. Don't put yourself in that position. You don't want to have to defend it.
Right. And it's all it takes. It takes one Twitter post or X post. It takes, one post on LinkedIn to, as a hiring manager, I'm not going to dox you, but if you send me your CV, you send me your LinkedIn profile, I'm going to go look at your LinkedIn profile before we talk, because I'm likely looking for opportunities for commonality, right? I'm a conversationalist interviewer. We've talked about that before. I'm not an interrogator.
Yep.
And I like to find the common ground to make you comfortable talking to me, because I can get a lot more from a conversation between you and I, as opposed to you being shields up interrogation, right?
That's right.
So I look for those threads. So I am going to go through your posts. I'm going to look for something maybe you posted a month ago, a couple of months ago, something maybe personally resonative with you. Okay. And I am going to look through some of your stuff. So just be cautious. The other thing, and it's funny since we're talking about LinkedIn lunatics, I just logged on. I just to see what's like new in my feed. Please don't post the graphics that say give yourself a point of things you've ever done. If you've ever gone ziplining, if you've ever skipped
Oh my
school, if you
goodness.
broke a
Right, right, right,
broke a
right, right.
bone, sung karaoke, been arrested, been drunk, skinny dipped, been skydiving, met a celebrity. Nobody cares. Congratulations. Guess what? That is Facebook content. Doesn't really belong here.
Yeah.
Now,
No,
I'm not
it
going to
really
hold,
doesn't. It doesn't.
and I see more and more of that. Look, I'm the first one to appreciate a good meme, and I'll throw one over the wall once in a while and post it because I happen to personally find them amusing. That particular one amusing. But some of these, it's the same old stuff over and over again, just a different graphic, different package. Um, I will tell you the other crazy thing,
Hmm.
and this is something recent that I've seen, is people doing posts, but the pictures that they include are like glamour shots,
Yes.
right? They are Instagram kind of look at me, either the way you're dressed or the background or what you're doing has absolutely nothing to do with what you posted. It is 100% just to catch someone's eye, get a little dopamine hit, and have somebody hit the like button. Probably didn't even read the content, but I'm seeing more and more of these people posting model shots, if you will. Now I can't tell if they're AI or they're natural, but the point
I
being
got to
is,
tell you, that's
on to,
that. By the way, for me,
Mhm.
that's generally a red flag. Like if I see a shot like that, I'm diving into their profile because I suspect that they're not real. That's what I'm usually doing if I see pictures like that. Now, it's a personal bias. So if I'm being mindful, the question is, am I being judgmental? I am. I identify that yes, I am. It's a bias that I have. So I will have to work on that. I'll own that. Nevertheless, right now, some of those shots look to the point where if they, they look AI generated, they're really, really strong glamour shots. Right now for me, it raises a little bit of a flag. I literally, before I jumped on, I just did that. I was checking something that got posted and I'm like, is this person even real? So yeah, it's not quite as fun because you know what? This week's lunacy is not quite as fun because some of this stuff we have hashed through so many times, the ATS, the this, the that, and so it's a little bit of craziness, but yeah, there's always something, and I am going to continuously say, this is now going to be a bit. I'm going to have to, every time I go on LinkedIn, I'm going to start writing stuff down. I'm going to jot notes just so that when we get together for these discussions, we can go through this because I think it's a good way to start the program before we get into. Although we're going to be recording part two with Amy, and I'm going to just make part two with Amy all about this stuff. That's what we're going to talk about LinkedIn lunacy, and then we're going to talk about some of the hot buttons in recruiting and job seeking, and really enjoy it. And I've told Amy we might even take a crack at live streaming. I really would like to do that. So I will
Yeah.
work on creating an event for that too. So
I have a laundry list of things that I know will set Amy off. So when let's not share that with her until she actually shows up. But
excellent.
I have a laundry list of things, whether they be um, email addresses and domains, which we've talked about, but Amy's
Oh
very
yes, yes,
very
yes, yes,
passionate
yes.
about that.
Yep.
PDF versus text versus latex code for your resume uploads to the ATS. It's a bunch of things like that. So yeah, we definitely an opportunity for us to go down that path with her. But yeah, I do have a list. Hey, by the way, Microsoft's turned 50 years old.
Microsoft turned 50
Hey,
years old.
just in case anyone was under a rock and didn't see it all over LinkedIn, the internet, Edge backgrounds. I mean, you name it, it's all over the place. But happy birthday to Microsoft, 50 years old.
I feel like it was just yesterday that we were in the 25th anniversary book.
Yes, both of our names are in the 25th anniversary book.
My wife's name is in the book too.
There you go.
You
My wife's name is not in the book.
know. All right. Coming up next, our interview with T. Morris and talking about AI and model training using pirated works. It's an interesting conversation. Welcome back, everybody. I have the great pleasure to welcome my friend and brother, T. Morris, to the show. T is a pioneer in the world of podcasting. He is a multi talented author, social media innovator. He kicked off his career in writing with the fantasy epic Moravai. I hope I said that right.
Close enough. Close enough.
Okay.
It's out of print, so it's fine.
The Chronicles of Rafe and Ascana, and that was, but it was in 2005 when he made history as the first author to podcast an entire novel, which, changed everything and how stories were shared. He co-founded audiobooks.com. He co-authored Podcasting for Dummies, now in its fourth edition. Fifth edition.
Fifth.
I know I have two of them.
Yeah.
They're in my office.
T, for the record, it really hasn't helped.
No, it hasn't.
It's okay. Look, when people say, oh, T, yeah, he's a pioneer. That's just another way of saying he old. So it's all right. It's all right. I accept that. That's what the tech industry calls you. Oh, this guy's a pioneer in the tech industry. Oh, he's that old. Oh, okay.
But besides the tech contributions, he's an incredible storyteller.
Thank you.
He's known for his award-winning steampunk series, The Ministry of Peculiar Occurrences, that was co-written with his wife, Pip Ballantyne, who also is a very accomplished author. She has she gotten another Alien?
She's got her second Alien novel out. It is called Seventh Circle. Got it right here.
How crazy. That's awesome.
Which I just tell people, this is proof that my wife is way cooler than me, because she actually wrote for the Alien universe. And after what happened over with Meta, Pip and I are both now saying that we are now AI developers because we contributed to their development of their AI engine. Not willingly, but we contributed to it. We contributed at least between the two of us, I would say we contributed about 30 to 40 titles.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, my introduction for T is turning into an Oscar speech, but the fact is there's that many things about him. When he's not crafting tales, helping guide people into podcasting or Twitch streaming, you can catch him streaming. He's either geeking out over Destiny, or now he's doing VR. He's doing, Batman. He's streaming Magic the Gathering.
So much.
He enjoys life in Virginia. And of course, I would be remiss if I did not mention his foray into the paranormal with Old Spirits Investigations with Phil Rossi.
Yeah.
Another
MRD.
MRD, that's right.
An MRD, a trombone player. Now,
yeah.
we were separated by about 10 years, but when we first met, he was like, I said, "What'd you march?" He was like, "Trombones." I'm like, "Get out."
Well, and the funny thing is, Old Spirit Investigations started as a Twitch streaming game you all were playing during the pandemic. You were playing Phasmophobia.
We were playing Phasmo. Yeah, we were playing Phasmophobia.
And my kids liked watching that. They used to love watching Phil Rossi's Scream Team play
Phil
Phasmo.
Rossi's Scream Team. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. And that kept us sane. And then we think about it, and we finally have opened up a merch store for Old Spirits Investigations, and one of the things we have is a t-shirt that says it all started with a video game. And I don't know where my wife found this, but she found some clip art of an 8-bit ghost with a video game controller in its hand.
Oh, nice.
And I'm like, okay, I need to get one of these.
I know, that's pretty dope. That is outstanding.
Hey man, I tell you, sure it wasn't AI driven?
I'm positive it wasn't AI driven. I'm positive. Because for one thing, the ghost didn't have 8 eyes. It didn't have 8 eyes and 3 arms and 25 fingers. But we digress.
That is outstanding.
We're going to talk about that, though. We are going to talk about.
Yes,
that.
we are. So,
hey, Sammy, we got to put a link to T's store.
Oh, I will.
In our show notes.
I will include it. Don't worry. I will absolutely include it.
I may be getting a shirt now. I may be getting a shirt now. T,
I am a follower
hot dogs
of
next week,
T's.
T.
I'm a subscriber to T's Twitch stream. I have been popping in and out of T's Twitch stream now for, gosh,
Quite
I
a few
don't even know
years.
how many years.
Quite a few years,
yeah,
yeah.
quite a
Yeah.
few years now. I had a chance to play on stream once with T. We were playing Halo Ultimate.
That's right. I totally
Yep,
forgot my brief foray into Halo, and I
that's
was like,
right.
okay, and I understand now why everybody has such a affinity for that game. And I'm like, yeah, I could see how Halo, how the developers of Halo, which was Bungie, would eventually turn that into Destiny. But it was good. That was a good time. I mean, Destiny's gone in a different track, and I haven't picked up the game since the end of the final shape. And there is a part of me that misses it, but honestly, the amount of time that I'm now dedicating into content creation and getting stuff ready for Old Spirits. I mean, in the background you can see that computer monitor. I'm putting final touches on another investigation,
That's
and
awesome.
it's just,
Love it.
I have to budget the time. There's only 24 hours in the day, and yeah. So I gotta budget that time. So
I'm starting to dive into some of that myself. I put a sizzle reel together for our podcast today and posted it up on LinkedIn.
perfect,
But
perfect.
I I'm with you on all that because my daughters at this point are adults,
Mhm.
as is your daughter's an adult at this point. She's in college, yes?
Yep. She's they're killing it in
They're killing
college.
it, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I'm
Excellent.
very
Okay.
very proud. Way smarter than the way I was in college. Doesn't do any of the shenanigans that you and I got up to. So I'm okay with that. I'm more than
Good
okay
for
with that.
them. That's
Yeah,
outstanding.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
outstanding. My daughters, they used to harass me. They didn't think I, they heard me talk about video games, never thought I actually knew how to do anything. I told them the stories, Ron, of us when we would go to the conventions for Microsoft and we would all cram into a room before Wi-Fi. There was freaking Cat 5 cables stretched all over the room, and we're playing Quake until all hours. And they didn't believe that any of that was real until my daughter watched me play Halo in a multiplayer game. And she watched me running across the screen. I'm like, "Ooh, sniper rifle, sniper rifle." And she's watching me run. I run over. She watches me slide. I go ahead and do the slide, grab the
Halo
sniper
fun.
rifle, switch to sniper rifle without even a hesitation. Quick flip, turn, zoom, headshot. Bang. And
Pop.
she like jumped out of her chair and went, "What the heck was this?" Said, "Skills, kid,
Skills.
before you were born I was doing this." So yeah, I love that because you know what. So Ron, one of the things worth mentioning is one of T's personas on his Twitch stream. He is known as Twitch Dad, and the reality is that old guys still rule at some of these games, and they just need to realize that just because we're older doesn't mean we don't know what we're doing. Hello, at the end of the
Exactly.
day, we invented this shit.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Long and
I
short of it.
digress. T, we brought you today for nothing else because we
Oh
could spend
God,
all
yeah.
day
I know we
talking
could.
about all kinds of shenanigans in particular. I mean, there is so much because I introduced my kids to you on your stream and they started watching. Like I said, my youngest daughter, who is at school now, loved watching the Phil and the Scream team play Phasmo. It was one of her favorite things.
It was a good time.
But
It was a very good time.
what we want to talk about today is tech related specifically. And before we get off, we'll spend a little bit of time talking about some more LinkedIn lunacy with you. But nevertheless, AI, and it's become a huge topic over the course. I mean, it was already huge, right? All of a sudden, Nvidia just blew up. Like folks in the tech space, any of us who've been there for a while, we'd heard of Nvidia for a while, but all of a sudden they blew up over AI, right?
Yeah.
And so AI has been captivating everybody from everything from art generated by Dolly to the answers that you would get from um, ChatGPT. As much as I'm not a huge fan of our leader of Doge, I actually have been fairly impressed with some of the stuff coming out of Grok. There's just so much going on. Well, between Meta, the things that have, the things that
Out
have
of surface.
brought it up to the surface now is, DeepSeek taking over headlines, and now the training of the models, because US companies are afraid of falling behind. They've taken to doing things that we all know you shouldn't do. We all know, right? I had a lengthy conversation with my daughter. Like, she walks around in her one piece pirate hat, and she's like, "Listen, Dad, I'm a pirate." I'm like, "Hello, your father's been working in software for 30 years. We don't steal software. You don't do that."
Right.
But I mean, that's what these companies are, if they're not doing it, and we know that they have, and we'll talk about that, they're at least considering it. So as a content creator yourself, particularly with all those books that you and Pip have put together, I wanted to have an opportunity to talk with you about, in particular, Meta and what they've been up to.
So I should also add to this that one of the last things that I did before Booz Allen and I parted ways was that I also received my certification in artificial intelligence and machine learning. So I can't do any programming in it, but I can talk about it. I am a trained consultant in artificial intelligence, and the thing I learned after going through my training is that it really isn't artificial and it really isn't intelligence. It's just machine learning. It's pattern recognition. That is what we're dealing with here. And when I hear people refer to folks that have strong opinions about AI, both good and bad, and automatically you have to wear the scarlet L, for Luddite, because you're the one slowing down progress. The thing about what went down with Meta, and for any of the listeners who don't know, if you've been under a rock or something like that, basically Meta, in a nutshell, what had happened was that an author was suing Meta for stealing his works. Somehow this guy, and I don't know the full details of it. I can only assume this guy had a friend who worked for Meta and was like, "Dude, I just saw Meta was training their AI with your books," and he brought this lawsuit up. And it was during the process of discovery that it was, oh, we didn't just get this guy's books. We also got Stephen King's books. We got we got George R. R. Martin's books. We've got Tom Clancy's books. Then they went even further and even more dumb. They stole Nora Roberts' books. This woman physically owns a town. I'm not, she's not the rich. No, she owns the freaking town, and they stole her books. People like that disappear. And it's New England. So they disappear in a very nice, cozy, murder she wrote kind of way. So yeah, I mean, and I hadn't heard from my former agent in years, and she wrote to me, and she wrote directly to me and said, "You need to know this went down." And I looked it up, and sure enough, I think with the exception of Moravi, every title that I have penned, even the stuff that I have self-published, it was all taken by Meta. And here's the weird bit. It's not the act of them torrenting my books and using them for their own purposes that I was upset about, believe it or not. When you become a published author, one of the things that you're going to struggle against is technology. You're going to struggle against not necessarily using of technology, but technology taking advantage of your works. I know for a fact, Pip and I, we were doing a Kickstarter to fund self-publishing the 5th and 6th book in the Ministry series. And I take that back, a month before we were to release, we hadn't even put out a release date yet. We just said, this is the title of our book. And already torrent sites were offering up the 5th edition. Now, what the 5th book? Now, here's the punchline. the only place that book was on online, we weren't even safe. We didn't even use a Dropbox or anything. We used a local cloud. So either A, they were hacking into our local cloud, or B, they just had malware, but they were using the title of our book to get people to download it so that they could download it and get malware on their computer. That is a common practice with torrent books and things like torrenting books and things like that.
Oh, sure.
Now, where but so you deal with piracy all the time, and it wasn't the fact that our books were pirated. Where it was really upsetting was that it was Meta. This is a multi-billion-dollar company, and they couldn't bother to do things properly and try to get them legally. This was faster, it was damn cheaper, and what came out during the discovery process was that people were saying, this doesn't feel right using torrent software on Meta property. The legal department was saying, this is a high-risk act we're getting into. And then little Caesar Zuckerberg himself saying, oh, yeah, let's do that. And the first excuse they gave is, well, we didn't think it would be that big of a deal. Then the second excuse they're giving is, well, we had to keep up with China. And I just wish they would just come out and say it. We did this because it's cheaper, faster, and we didn't have to deal with that. We didn't have to deal with the smelly authors. And that was where I felt the most disappointed, because we've been hearing about how we're going to make social media better. We've been hearing that from Little Caesar ever since he redid his hair and started doing MMA. He said things are going to be different. Things are going to change. And then they pull this. I mean, Sean, somewhere in the world, Sean Fanning is laughing his ass off. And I am, when people say, how can you be disappointed? It can't surprise you. I can still not be surprised, but I can still and be disappointed at the same time.
As I said, I've spent the last, Ron and I together, the two of us together, because we started at Microsoft together. We've spent the last 30 years working for software companies. So, it's one of those things that, even if it was something that I did when I was a kid in college, that crap stopped when I started making a living by selling software, right? That crap just stopped, right? Because that's, now I get it. I'm taking money off of people's tables. You don't do stuff like that. So if your business is software in any way, shape, or form, then you should understand what the impact of that is. And I don't want to hear and listen, I get it. It's no secret that DeepSeek did this, right? Their paper for its vision language model, language model mentions the use of Anna's archive. It mentions it. And Ron knows this because he and I used to talk about this. It's no secret that they were going to steal content. Of course not. Right? Back in the mid 90s, the joke was we needed to sell our one copy of Office in China. That was the joke, because the minute you sold one, that was it.
That was it. Yeah, it did.
Right?
Yeah,
and all of a sudden, there's another version of Office out there that has nothing to do with Microsoft, and it looks like Office, but it's not, because somebody else effectively just stole it. So it's not a surprise that, a Chinese startup is going to flaunt intellectual property laws, and nobody in Silicon Valley can pretend that they didn't know that was coming. So,
T, let me ask you a quick question. I know that the Meta thing is personally rubs you the wrong way, but Sam Altman's running around trying to get laws changed to basically say, mea culpa, I did a bunch of illegal stuff now. I don't want you to hold me accountable for it. I mean, is it rampant within the industry, or you just, or is it more meta? Because I mean, when Sam Altman came out with his diatribe on why he thinks we should drop the copyright aspects because we don't want China to beat us because he uses the specter of China all the time.
And that's another thing that really got under my skin,
Mhm.
because first it was we didn't realize we were doing anything wrong. Then then Meta and to some extent Altman said, "Oh wait, that doesn't really carry water because we're supposed to be super tech geniuses and we should know better." So then it became, well, we need to beat China because that's the panic button. That's the favorite panic button. We need to beat China. We need to beat China. And it's like, look, quite honestly, I feel like China can go ahead and beat themselves. As far as I'm concerned, if you really want to if you want to beat China, but use their approach to it, pack up your operations and work out of China. Be my guest. But they don't want to do that because, again, I won't make as much money if I'm not here in the great U.S. of A. And I'm not, and I can say I'm not speaking as a Luddite. I went through this training, like I said, with Booz Allen,
Mhm.
and they were taught in the intro to AI, they were basically saying AI is going to free you up and allow you to do more complex, more creative, and more rewarding tasks. This I don't know who this guy was, but all I remember was that he had a very thick, almost like Norwegian accent, and he was telling the story about how this is what AI is going to be, and he kept going back to that. It's going to free up people to do more creative, less tedious, more complex tasks. He kept saying that over and over again, and I kept writing down in my notes, like what? Can you define me these things? And when I was asking other AI consultants and other AI professionals, I would say, you keep using this turn of phrase, but I'm still asking, like what? And they couldn't answer me because they didn't want to stray out of the parameters because this was their bread and butter. And you're going to find too that most of the people that really push AI and push ChatGPT and push Leonardo and other Gen AI software packages, you'll find out when you look up their work experience, most of them are quote unquote social media entrepreneurs. This is doublespeak for people who have never done anything original in their lives. And if people go, wow, this guy really is an old man shaking his fist at the cloud. No, I am an award-winning author. I'm an award-winning author, and I got 20 titles under my belt. I put in the time to create something from nothing. And when Sam Altman is saying we need to relax, no, Sam Altman, you need to stop ghostwriting, having stuff ghostwritten, and actually sit down behind a keyboard and try to create something worthwhile. And I'm not talking about software. I'm not talking about building a business or anything. I'm talking about writing something from scratch, like whether it is a nonfiction novel or a nonfiction book or a science fiction novel, something original, and then see how you feel when somebody takes that work for themselves and either A, tries to pass it off as their own, or B, uses it to instead of paying you do rights for it, goes on ahead and just uses it to train an AI model. I guarantee you, if Sam Altman had created anything from scratch properly, he would have a very different tone. And I know this because this came back to me. Somebody held my feet under the fire when I was back in the early aughts. I was downloading tracks left and right off of Napster.
Right, Napster.
Not thinking twice about it.
Here's a throwback.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I remember somebody said, "T, you're an author, and you're okay with using Napster?" And I said, "Well, I'm just downloading a song here and a song there. I'm not harming anybody." And that's when my friend gave me some perspective and said, "How would you feel if people were handling your novel that way? Just downloading a chapter here, downloading a chapter there. Just they weren't harming anything, right? They're just taking a chapter here and a chapter there." And that was the day I deleted Napster off of my machine.
Yeah, I think Sam, you and I had that real similar experience when we were at Microsoft,
Mhm.
and we were like, "Wait a second,
Yeah.
I thought about stuff I had on my machine at home, Winamp, and it really whips the Campbell's ass, and
Yep.
then then Napster and a lot of that stuff, and I'm like, yeah, that's wrong on so many layers. There used to be
Right.
remember the old crack engine, Hasta La
Oh,
Vista,
Yeah.
Hasta La Vista box.sk. I don't even know if it's still around anymore, but they used to give you all the serial numbers so you could download the demos and then
Sure.
change the registry, and magically you unlocked all the features. So yeah, they
Well,
got rid of all that after we started working
and
for
here's the
Microsoft.
thing. Would Facebook DCMA you if you went and did a Facebook Live video with copyrighted music in the background? And if
In a
the
hot
answer
second.
in a hot
in a
second,
hot second.
that is
second.
absolutely right.
Yep.
So
And it was even more so during the pandemic because everybody was at home. They were trying to justify their jobs, and suddenly there were all these Twitch streamers that were like, "What do you mean I'm getting DMCA'd?"
yes,
And then there were some people that were trying to maneuver around and say, "Well, it's fair use." I'm like, "Well, hang on a minute." And I do think there is a place for fair use. Like when people use clips of stuff in YouTube videos, or if they're doing reviews, or if they're even doing a comical roast. There are some there are some properties that are very, very protective of their IP. And part of me is like, yeah, but if someone is doing a review or doing a roast or doing a commentary, they're going to need clips from, say, Iron Man, or they're going to need clips of something from CBS's Ghost, or Paramount's 1929, or whatever pop culture you're consuming. That's fair use. But then there was a case that happened recently with a streamer, QXC, and he was saying that he was being sued by a documentary maker, and he was going, no, it's fair use. It was fair use. The entire video was him watching the movie. He wasn't commenting on the movie. He was quote unquote a react. And then he said, oh, it's a reaction video. It's like, no, you're in the top corner. People could blink and you'd miss it. And you're watching the movie. So no.
yeah, it's not like Mystery Science Theater 3000 or something. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. So it doesn't fall under fair use. And at one point during this thing where he was saying, "Oh, it's fair use," it was a reaction video. At one point, he gets up and leaves, and then comes comes back to the video. I'm like, dude, come on.
That's right.
Okay, but you can thank the the crazies like Sniper Wolf, right?
Yes.
And she did a lot of that, just stealing other
Same
people's
thing.
content,
Right.
and
And
her
it's like,
reaction
I'm helping
video
them
was
out.
ridiculous, right? It was,
And I'm helping them out. No, you're not helping anybody out. You're only helping yourself.
Right.
You're only helping yourself in that respect. And that's the darker side, unfortunately, of it's not always big corporations. It's just sometimes people who either do not understand the law, or they think that it doesn't apply to them. I remember after what was known as the DMCA apocalypse, when all these Twitch streamers were told,
yep,
this stops. And I remember when I was writing the second edition of Twitch for Dummies, I had to update that section. But pre-pandemic, I was writing Twitch for Dummies, and I had to sit down with my tech editor, my chief editor, and we had to really navigate when we were talking about the legality of people playing music. And I was one of them. I was playing Frank Sinatra sometimes. I was loving it. Nothing was more relaxing than going into the Crucible and just doing headshot while you got Frank in the back going strangers in the night. You know what I mean? There was something totally Billy Badass about that. But we sat down and we're hammering out, and the best thing that we could say in Twitch for Dummies was, right now it is more or less looking the other way and a very flimsy handshake that nothing is going to change on Twitch, that you can have music playing in the background, whatever songs, your own playlist, whatever, and you can go on ahead and do your thing and nobody's going to say anything. And I remember I typed all that up and I just said, nah, I got to add in one more thing. And I typed out, this agreement could change at any time, period. One line all by itself. and then I'm writing the second edition, and I'm just update. I got to that point and I got to that line, and underneath it I said, "Welcome to any time." And I just said, this whole fallout could have been avoided if Twitch had just said, stop doing this. But there were friends of mine who were still playing their playlists and going, yeah, I'm going to keep doing this until someone tells me I can't. And I'm like, look, that's like Facebook saying, we're going to do this until we get caught. And then if we get caught, now we're going to play like, oh, we're trying to keep up with China, derp, derp, derp. No, you knew what you're doing was wrong, but you just said, well, we could probably get away with it because we're meta. And that was a bit of a heartbreak. But yes, it works on both. You don't have to be a big corporation. You can be someone like Sniper Wolf. You can be, and I'm the first one to say it. When I put together, stuff from Old Spirits, if I can, I'll sneak in a movie drop in or a clip or something like that. I mean, I remember one time I was doing a video, for Old Spirits, and Phil and I, in the clip, Phil and I are walking towards this very creepy building, and Phil says, "We've come this far," and I paused and I said this for real. I said this for real at the investigation. You know who said that? Kane said that right before he got a face hugger. Do you know that? And over that dialogue, I found the clip of John Hurt, yeah, looking into the egg right as the face hugger came up, and I dropped it in there, and people go, oh, T, that's copyright. No, it's fair use. I'm transforming the original work and turning it into something else, right? And it's an understanding of the law. It's an understanding of right versus wrong. It's also an understanding of making content truly your own. And bringing it back to AI, the thing that I don't think people really thought through about all of this is that all of this could have been avoided had they just asked for permission.
Right. Right.
All
They,
of that could have
like
been
you said,
avoided.
they waited until they got caught.
Right. And the other problem too that I think that they didn't really think through, and I don't mind saying this, you meet a lot of authors. And sometimes when you want to get to know another author, you read their books. And I'm here to tell you, I've met a lot of authors in my time, and I've read their books, and I go, how did you become a published author? Because man, there's some bad books out there. And I remember shutting down the argument. Well, if you're with a small publisher, you weren't good enough to be with one of the larger houses in New York. And I remember shutting that argument down by going, look me in the eye and tell me that every book you've bought from a major New York publisher has been good. And look me in the eye and tell me that, because I can tell you right now, you'd be lying if you were.
Right.
And you also have poorly written books. You've got books that are poorly written on purpose, and you're feeding this into an AI machine. There was no there. You're not going to tell me with that many titles involved there was some sort of human element in there.
Oh yeah, we made sure we picked only the Caldecott Award winners.
Exactly.
Yeah, Oxford, comma, and Emilts. That's all.
Exactly. With the amount of, I'll even say it, with some of the typos in some of my books that I've caught after they're embarrassing. Authors never talk about their typos, but they're there, and you're feeding this into you're feeding this into an AI machine. If you feed any kind of model, it's that old saying, garbage in, garbage out. If you're feeding a model bad data, you're going to get bad data as output. And that's the thing about artificial intelligence and what it should be called: machine learning. It's not AI, it's machine learning. It's where my iPhone has Apple Intelligence, which means that when it pulls up a picture of a cat, of one of my cats, it says it's a cat. Thank you. That's great. That's really worth the extra 200 you're charging me for my iPhone now. But the thing about machine learning is if you are not checking that data, and that was just something that I learned as I'm getting my certification in this from Booz Allen. If you don't have somebody on the other side, outside of the model, checking the data to make sure that it's solid data, that it's good data, that it's reliable data, you have no idea what the output's going to be. And that is why I don't, that is why I really believe you can tell ChatGPT has written copy. This is how you can tell. You've got generative AI with with an image of Gal Gadot naked, but she's got 7 fingers on one hand. You've got music that doesn't sound quite right, and and wow, the amount of YouTubers that are now using AI generated voiceover software, that's ridiculous.
Oh,
And I'm
well,
amazed YouTube has not, and they won't, because it would be like Instagram, cracking down on bot followers when Kim
right.
Kardashian, people know that about somewhere between 70 to 80%, and that was a few years ago, 70 to 80% of the people that all follow Kim Kardashian, they're all bots. They're all bots. But they're not going to crack down on that. And they're not going to crack down on AI created voiceovers. And that, I think, is some of that stuff is absolutely terrifying. Pip tried to train a model for her voice. And when I heard it within 15 seconds, I looked at her and I said, please do not release that to the public. That is wrong. She has rarely seen me angry. And I was livid. The only other time that ever happened was when she tried to swap out sugar with stevia. And I'm like, don't ever do that again. Never do that again, woman. So, yeah.
Well, and T, have you seen the Reid Hoffman stuff where he created an AI clone of himself, and he actually has he's gone through a complete training of that model, and he's been showing it around as, people actually interview his AI entity, right? So he kind of did a core dump on who he is and answering the most common questions, and the AI responds in not only sounding like him but looking like him.
Right.
I don't know if you've seen that with Reid.
I have not. And
Okay.
and honestly,
It's something to look up if you're bored.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but this is where I almost want to put my head through a wall concerning this stuff, is that we've dealt with this before, and we've been, and we've consumed, countless amounts of media on how dangerous this is. People like to cite Terminator. Every time they talk about AI out of control, they automatically go to Terminator. I'm like, right era, wrong movie. If you really want to get a more realistic look at what is being done with machine learning and artificial intelligence, look at War Games.
Right.
War Games is far more accurate, in my opinion, because this is a not necessarily a self-aware machine, but a machine learning device that's going through all these different scenarios and going, oh, we're getting ready to go to global thermonuclear war, so I better start doing this. And that feels way more, that is really what we're dealing with here. It's not necessarily the Terminators, the T-1000s, or what have you. It's the Whoppers. It's the big honking machines that are taking up a lot of resources and teaching themselves, this is the outcome, but it's based on bad data. And when I see stuff like that, when people are saying, "Oh yeah, I created a clone of myself," yeah, you can look up all those little short stories from the 50s and 60s where that was always considered a bad idea. I'm sure you could find something about in the Twilight Zone on that, some of the original Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
I don't need to do that. If I'm gonna actually take the time to suggest to my wife the notion that I'm going to create an AI clone of myself, and I'm gonna watch. I'm gonna take a couple steps back so that I'm not around the collateral damage when.
But and then and then it becomes then you start getting into the ethics of it. You start getting into the ethics of AI, and it's something that I wrote about in Podcasting for Dummies, of all things. I can now say I'm a published author with in the subject of AI and machine learning, because I talk about it. In fact, it goes right back to the original Star Trek. There was and I remember as a kid this episode, and I mean I've always been a geeky, nerdy kid with technology. I've always loved it, but this episode, this one particular episode, scared the living shit out of me as a kid. It was called The Ultimate Computer, and it was the episode where you met Richard Daystrom, the guy that invented all of the computers that help run the Federation ships, and he's got this new and improved model, the M5, and it can and at one point he actually says, Richard Daystrom says, man no longer need to risk their lives. They can focus on more on safer, more creative, self-enriching activities. And I'm like, wow, this is the guy that trained me on machine learning. This must be the same. Must be the same guy. And at one point, Spock, of all people, says, "Computers make excellent servants, but I do not wish to serve underneath them." And and that is where I feel like I personally am navigating my own AI machine learning journey, because I use AI. I use AI in ghost hunting, and I use it to some extent in the production. Um, First off, Adobe Premiere has AI algorithms inside it where it will help me sync up audio and video. I basically say, here are three sources of video. Here's my external audio. Sync it into one, and it will do it. And then I literally can just click between source on source, have have everything lined up. At one time, that would take me like an hour to just get right, to get perfect. But now AI can do it in a matter of minutes. Now, am I upset about that? No. I mean, to me, that is AI helping me get the job done. Fine. But I have been sent ads for AI software that will edit the video for me. And I'm like, nope. That's a
Right.
hard no. That's a
Right.
hard freaking no. I'm not letting you edit it. You can help me edit, but you are not going to make the edit calls. That's my job. And then you've got when we put together a show, one of the things that there's a science to putting together um, a thumbnail. You've got to put together the right thumbnail. And I refuse to be that guy that does the goofy, what are known as YouTube faces. It's funny, it's scary, and you put your face in half of that thumbnail, and then the rest of it is just something related to it. So we have been exploring and working with AI engines in Adobe to create thumbnails. And I've had many a debate. I can't hire an artist to just crank out thumbnails. It would break my bank. And thumbnails are kind of are what I call, and Sam, yes, if your daughters get wind of this and they hate me for saying this, they got to bear with me here.
Yeah. Right.
It's disposable art.
Right.
It's not I don't consider thumbnails to be art. They're supposed to catch your eye. And so they are art in the sense of they are clean, they are well put together, it's professional, it looks good, and you're going to stop and go, "Oh, I want to look at this." And the thing about AI is if you tell it to create something ghostly, man, it will create some straight up nightmare fuel. It's created some wonderful graphics for us for previous episodes. But am I turning them into posters and framing them or anything like that? No, it's disposable. It's like it's like a podcast. Podcasts were designed by design; they were meant to be disposable. Unless I'm creating them, and then that time they should be treasured as touchstones in podcasting history. But when you're but even when I'm doing paranormal investigations, there's a piece of software that I use, and we talk about it in season 4 of Old Spirits. There's a piece of software that I use called GhostTube Seer, and this is a really innovative app. So this app is like other software and hardware out there, like an Ovulus or a Paratech or the Spirit Box is another popular one, where it will either pick up random words or will spit out random words. And the idea is that spirits are made up of electromagnetic frequencies and electromagnetic energy, and they're able to manipulate and find the word in the word bank and spit it out to you. So you might be talking, and then suddenly you'll get grandmother, or you'll get school, or murder, right? Something like that. But what Seer does is Seer uses an AI algorithm, and instead of spitting out the word out to you, it will scour the internet and then use that algorithm and create generative AI art. It won't show you what the word is. It's just going to give you an image. And it's, is it the most scientific tool I've ever used? Not really. But is it really cool to use on my show? Is it really cool to use out in the field? Oh, heck yeah. Because some of the images that it creates is really astounding. Probably the most incredible one that we had was that there was a friend of mine. She was doing something called an SD session. She was blindfolded. She was listening to the spirit box. She was not aware of anything around her, and we're talking to her, getting responses off the spirit box, and then Seer kicks in and did a AI generated picture of her, blue hair, high cheekbones, rosy cheeks. These were all her features. And I, to this day, cannot explain that image, but it was really fascinating when it happened.
Oh, I bet.
And again, this is AI helping me in an investigation. I'm okay with that. But if someone were to say, well, I want to do I have this thing called the Ghost Bot. And the Ghost Bot is an AI driven, you don't have to worry now about going into a creepy house that might fall on top of you. You just send in Ghost Bot, and Ghost Bot will do the investigating for you. F that. I'm not going to do that.
No, that takes all the fun out of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get you.
So the idea of, I get it. It's a competition. I get it. We're trying to stay ahead of all these different developers.
Right.
But even when there was a very infamous moment when the Wall Street Journal was interviewing, I think she was either the chief financial, no, she was the chief technology officer for OpenAI. And the girl from the Wall Street Journal asks her, so are you saying you're not getting all of your, are you getting your media to train your model? Are you getting it from stuff online? And she said, we're getting stuff from and she nodded her head and she said, yes, we are training our models on openly available video. And then the girl pressed and said, you mean like YouTube, which have terms and conditions and and things are copyrighted, on YouTube? Is that where you're getting your video from? And she made this face. I'm going to see if I can do it without pulling a muscle in my neck. But I remember she did this. She just went, and she contorted her face. And I'm sitting there going, you're the chief technology officer. If anybody should know how your AI is being trained, it's you. And with that type of hubris, it boggles my mind that they think it's okay. They think it's okay, and it's not okay. Especially when you're associated with a company that has billions of dollars in its pocket. If you are bringing in that kind of revenue, you can afford to do things above board and do things right. And I think that is inherently a problem, and has been a problem in the technosphere.
Yeah, I mean, it's less surprising when you know that DeepSeek was trying to build their stuff on a shoestring to begin with. And so now to find out that they cut some corners, okay, big surprise.
Right.
But yeah, if you're, it doesn't matter who you are at this point, right? Well, it doesn't matter if you're Anthropic. It doesn't matter if you're, um, XAI. It doesn't matter if you're. I mean, if you're XAI, if you had the wherewithal to be able to buy X, then I guess you should have the money to be able to do whatever. Um, things like that. That's, they should be able to make sure, as you said, they're doing things above board. And to try to now play this game where they're saying it's fair use is nonsense. It'll be interesting to see how this gets litigated out, considering there's already one court ruling against them against um, there's already one court ruling against AI, an AI tool for directly uh, going against the copyright owner's own offerings and everything else. So there's already one of those already. That was one that was against Reuters. Um, a competitor, Ross Intelligence, they are Westlaw. They're a competitor of Westlaw, and they were trying to rapidly catch up. And the way they were doing that was they were using an AI to actually um, to build its offering, and they got caught. And Reuters sued them. And initially, they had Reuters had tried to get a summary judgment, and they were denied. So they had to litigate it out, and it turns out that the court ended up actually overturning that and granted summary judgment for Reuters, and they were sufficiently original to copy, to the copyright protection, and Ross had copied them illegally. So
Now, I would say I'd be the first one to say, and this is going back to uh, to 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 what has been brought up before about copyright issues. I do think the Digital Millennium Copyright Act is horrendously out of date,
oh,
and it was horrendously out of date the moment they came up with it.
that's right.
It was done in a hurry. It was done in a panic,
Yep.
and with the exception of a few people on Capitol Hill, nobody knew what the internet was going to be.
Nope.
Nobody knew what it was going to be like. Um, I do think that um, punishing punishing content creators for playing video games to their favorite music or their favorite playlists. I think that's a I think that's a bit extreme. I also would say too that there were people that were getting penalized for music that was being featured in the game, which is ridiculous in its own self. Which is why you're now seeing a lot of video game developers create quote unquote
Yes.
stream safe soundtracks,
Right.
which means yeah, you have permission to use our soundtracks and all that stuff. That's fine, but yeah, we're not going to be playing pop music anymore in the I mean, when I was playing Bioshock
Oh,
Infinite, yeah,
yes.
great game, Bioshock Infinite.
Great game.
They were playing around with time slips and things like that.
Yes.
So at some points, you heard you heard Cyndi Lauper singing "Girls Want to Have Fun," but earlier in the game, you actually hear I think it's called a calliope. It's one of those things.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like at old school carnivals, it was playing "Girls Want to Have Fun," and then you walk by a barbershop quartet, and I'm like, wait a minute, I know that song, and I'm listening, and sure enough, it was God Only Knows done as a barbershop quartet, and I'm like, okay, so now we're doing the Beach Boys, and then I thought, oh, am I going to get flagged for this? It turns out I didn't. But while yes, I think copyright laws desperately need an overhaul. At the same time, they're essential in protecting my work, your work, whatever work we do, because to me, there's no difference between the validity of a novel that I've written set in a steampunk universe and you guys writing software.
Right.
I mean, yeah, you can joke about it. You can joke about it where all we have to do is sell that one copy in China, and you do the next thing. Then within 24 hours, you've got an illegal copy on there. But that's because, and that's what it's like in a lawless, copyright-less society.
Right.
And you know, it is a very slippery slope that we are on right now. I'm all for AI as a tool to help me do something. I'm all for machine learning that's going to help me do something faster, or do something that may be out of my scope. I know. I mean, I use Chat GPT when I'm coming up with show descriptions. I say, write me a 200-word show description based on an paranormal investigation of this, this, and this, and make it search engine optimized, because it's really hard coming up with SEO ready copy. And then ChatGPT spits it out. I read it. I go, okay, that's crap, but I can work with this. And then I go back and I rewrite it with that human touch. And I said it when I got my certification. I still say it now. I do not think that artificial intelligence and machine learning is truly going to benefit anybody unless there is some sort of human interaction.
Hey everyone. So the interview with T. Morris, there was so much content, so much quality content. We couldn't fit it into a single episode. So to catch the rest of this, you will have to stay tuned for part 2, which will be published shortly after the publishing of episode part 1. Stay tuned for the update, and thank you for listening. Take care of one another, and we will see you soon. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for listening to the TechCurrents podcast. The TechCurrents podcast is hosted by Sam Cavalier. All content and views expressed as part of the TechCurrents podcast are solely those of the hosts and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the podcast platform, any employment organizations, or any affiliated entities. This podcast is informational purposes and should not be considered for professional, legal, or financial advice. Please consult with your qualified, licensed experts for your specific needs. This is Daniel Iverson. Thank you for listening.